Welcome to Elaine's Literary Salon. I'm Jeffrey Higgins. This is my wife Cynthia's and my restaurant. This is all based on my wife Cynthia's family recipes from Alexandria, Egypt. We've won lots of awards for the food and for the drinks, so it's nice to see you eating. You're helping us stay in business. We've turned this literary salon into a safe space for authors around the DC metro area. We've become a big hub. You're very welcome. It's good to have you here. If you're an author or know an author, we offer free space to come in and hold an event. And honestly, people need to do that to celebrate the work. And it's a lot of work. People don't understand that. So Lynda Allen writes the Liv Wilde Mysteries, in which menopause is a superpower. Since she has had to put up with hot flashes daily, she figured she might as well make them useful. Flashes of Insight was published in 2024. Book 2, Flashes of a Dying Hour, came out in 2025. And Flashes of Fire and Fury, the third in the series, launched just last month, right?
Yep.
Which day was it?
June 25th.
Wow, so it's brand new. Lynda is also the author of 4 poetry collections and a nonfiction book. Before focusing her knack for storytelling on writing, Lynda began her career in video, post-production, and documentary filmmaking. Definitely want to talk to you about that. That sounds really interesting. Lynda proudly infuses her writing with her Jersey girl sensibilities and aims to create stories imbued with heart and humor. She lives in
Frederick. And a little profanity.
If they didn't know that, they'll know it by the end of this. She lives in Fredericksburg, Virginia, where her mysteries are set with her husband, their cat, and the many incredible eagle friends who pay them frequent visits. So please welcome Lynda Allen.
Thank you very much.
And we are recording this for our podcast. I have Elaine's PR director, Hope Gibbs, is in the back here. So if you haven't checked out our podcast, go to elainesliterarysalon.com. Our podcast is #1 on Apple and Spotify for Literary Salons. So please check us out. I think she's got about 70 episodes up right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope.
So, Lynda, just so in case people don't know, give us a little backjack copy. No spoilers. What is this third in the series about?
A modern-day witch hunt. So Liv has psychic visions during hot flashes that help her solve mysteries. And word is starting to get around about her special supernatural ability, and someone who I would call a religious fanatic gets fixated on her and decides that they need to punish her for these special powers that she has. So she receives a series of threatening letters that that threaten biblical punishments for witches. Now that was an interesting bit of research, just looking into what the Bible says about witches. Some pretty nasty things that you're supposed to do to witches. So that was eye-opening. And so she receives a series of letters threatening her and her family. And she keeps having these visions of fire and fury, of a woman being attacked in the woods and left for dead in a fire. But she doesn't know when that's happening. So she's trying to figure out if these two things are being done by the same person. And her friends, of course, her circle of friends, are helping her try and figure that out. But then there's also a baseball storyline, the Fred Nats, which is our local minor league team. And I'm a huge baseball fan, so I had to write them into one book. And so a baseball player shows up on her doorstep randomly, asking for her help because he swears he's been cursed because he can't hit the ball. And he wants her to help find his lost mojo. So she's got all these things happening that she's trying to figure out with her visions.
I love it. It's a really interesting idea. One of the things I really like about it is everything you just said comes across on the first page. You know, and there's this thing about reader promises that you have to do. When people pick up a book, they want to know, genre. They want to understand what the story's about. They want to get the tone of it, the humor, everything that you incorporate in that. But you get it right away. That's really hard to do for authors. A lot of authors do not do that.
I think the voice is very distinct. Yes. Liv, I have so much fun writing Liv and her friends. Her friends are based on my circle of friends. And so when I write it, I feel like I'm spending time with them. And I really enjoy that. And so I think that comes across in the stories too, that these people are just fun to hang out with. So yeah, and I think that Liv has a very distinctive personality because she's going through this change in her life. And she needs a little support from her friends and from her neighbor Lucia, who is her spiritual go-to person who helps her with things like that. And so we learn more about Lucia in this book, in book 3, and about her special abilities that Liv didn't really know too much about yet. So
because you have the psychic ability in this, and it's a pure mystery as well, right? What is the main genre or subgenre that where this lies?
Well, technically, I really think they are cozy mysteries because it adheres to all the cozy guidelines except for profanity. So there is profanity in the books. So I refer to them as Jersey cozies because it's an easy way to warn people about the profanity. I grew up in South Jersey, and so I gave Liv that privilege as well. And so, yeah, she's an authentic Jersey girl.
Did you make up the Jersey cozy?
Yes.
So
I have coined that phrase.
That is your brand.
Yes.
I mean, that's fantastic.
And menopause
right?
as a superpower.
Like, because people kind of get it, and it's also funny, right? And
Yes.
it's on. I mean, that is the brand.
I have had one person from New Jersey get a little angry with me for using that term, for implying that all people from New Jersey use profanity.
When she got angry.
But you know what I told her. So, I won't repeat it here, but you know what I told her. So no, I thought that was very funny that someone got upset about that. But yes, that's where okay, honestly, there's a story from my childhood. We used to have to ride our bikes to and from school in this little teeny tiny town that I grew up in. And I have a distinct memory. One of my elementary school friends is here today. Riding my bike to school with my friends, and we're like going through this wooded section, and we are just shouting out every swear word we can think of because we're practicing using them. So everything we can think of, we're just riding our bikes along on our way to elementary school and using every swear word we could think of. So yeah, it's an authentic New Jersey book.
Should we pause now and you can go through all the profanity of your book?
Well, there are some creative ones in there, especially in the first book. There's a scene, and I wondered how people would take it, but there's a scene where, so Liv is a widow, and her youngest daughter is away at college, and she's having a hard time sometimes when she's missing her dad, because none of her friends at school know her dad, so it's hard to share the stories. So she calls her mom, and she wants her to tell the story of how they met. And so she retells her the story, but she adds a lot of creative swearing into it to make her laugh, because she's trying to cheer her up. But I also wondered if, that string of profanity would be a little too much for some of my readers. But, I haven't had any complaints about the profanity in the book, and I think it helps to warn people in advance.
People can definitely get that early and get your sense of humor.
Yes.
But when you think of cozy, you think of books without profanity, right?
Yes.
But is that something we all just sort of believe, or do you think that's real? Because you're noticing the crossover, right?
Yes, it is changing over time, but cozy readers are usually very, they'd like to adhere to those rules, those cozy rules. And so they will, to other people I know who are cozy writers, they have written to them and said, you used the word hell 4 times in this book, and they're complaining about the use of the word hell. So they really don't want to read my books. In the new book, that's on the first page, right? So yeah, you know right from the beginning that it's going to be a little spicy in that regard. But in other regards, she's an amateur sleuth. It's set in a small town. There's a circle of friends. So it really does qualify as cozy in every other way.
Where did the original idea, do you remember how it formed and how it changed? How did you get from the initial inception, what caused it, and then how did it turn into a series?
Okay. Well, I've always loved to read mysteries ever since I was a kid. I think actually really it goes back to my mom. She would read me picture books of Dory the Good Witch. And they were little tiny mysteries. There were little bits of mystery in there, but I loved her because she was always mixing things up. She had the wrong socks on. They never matched. She was just a mess, but I loved her. And so I think that was my first introduction to mysteries. And then I read a lot of Phyllis Whitney when I was in high school. And I just always loved to read mysteries. And then when I started going through perimenopause and didn't know what it was and had really terrible mood swings, and the whole process was just nothing glorious, I decided I wanted to try to write a novel. And so mystery was what I wanted to write. But I was like, what am I going to write about? Who is this character? And then I remembered a sign that I had seen at a chiropractor's office years ago that said, they're not hot flashes, they're power surges. And that had stuck with me all that time. And I was like, what if you could make them into something powerful instead of the crap that it felt like to me? Because I was having them 5 to 10 times a day, every single day, and I had it for 10 years. Oh. And it was miserable. It really impacted all parts of my life. My husband knows for sure. He got. Is
that the gentleman crying over
there?
Yes.
He got introduced to Gigi before anyone else. So Gigi stands for Grumpy Gal, and that's the nickname I gave my moody personality when I finally realized what was going on. And it really turned out to be beneficial to bring humor to it, to give her a name, to call her out when she would show up. And I could tell my husband, I'm having a Gigi kind of day. And he would honestly know what that meant, and he would give me the space that I needed that day. And it became a really helpful tool in our marriage. And so I gave that gift to Liv. So she has her own Gigi. And in the new book, actually, one of her friends is starting to go through perimenopause. And so they're working on a name for her grumpy personality. So I think everybody should give their grumpy personality a nickname because it really helps.
No, I love that. So when a writer writes a book, right, they create this really unique connection to each reader. Right? Everyone who reads it has their own experience. But because of that, there's also themes and messaging between the author and the reader. Is when you're doing this about menopause as a power, is there like another message in that you want readers to get, or a different way to look at it?
Oh, absolutely. Because so it was almost 2 decades ago that I started going through it. And I had, honestly, I consider myself a relatively intelligent person, but I had no idea what was going on when it first started. And there was not the information that there is available now. And nobody would talk to me about it. I got my women friends, I sent out these notes. I was like, we should get together and talk about menopause. And 2 people showed up, and we met once and we never met again. And so I felt very alone in this process, that I had no way to understand it. My doctors weren't talking to me about it. And so that really was part of the intention behind the books, was to spark conversations among women. I wanted them to have the conversations that I didn't get to have, that would have really helped me move through that process with a little more grace than I did. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that was important to me in writing the books, and why I wrote about menopause, because who would write about menopause in a mystery? It just doesn't seem to make sense. But for me, it was a really important part of the story, and that her friends talk about it with each other, that they're really honest. They have some really honest conversations about it. There's a really fun one in the new book that I had a great time writing that horrified my brother when he read it, because he's my proofreader, and that was fun getting the text from him. He actually, I don't know how your viewers are going to feel about this, but I got a text from my brother that said, "I can't believe you're making me read about vaginal dryness." And I almost fell off my chair. It was so funny just to imagine him reading that. So yeah, and I think it can be very educational for men, though, because you're going to have a woman in your life who's going through this. I want you to know a little bit about it.
You should put that line in one of your books for this. So the first one was out about 2 years ago, so you've had feedback. When you're getting feedback from readers, and I'm sure you get all kinds,
yes.
Are people talking about that and about the way you're talking about menopause, or maybe other books aren't? Is that something that comes up? Like, what is your reader feedback in general?
I think most of what I get is that they love the friendships in the book. They're very strong female friendships, and they appreciate that. But one of my favorite things at events is, if someone doesn't know about the books, is to say, she has psychic visions during hot flashes. And my favorite reaction is people just throw their head back and laugh out loud. And it's great, because it's that shift in perspective that I think is important, because there are days when I could not get to that shift, where I felt miserable and unhappy, and I didn't know how I was going to get through this another day. And to bring some lightness to it for somebody is really important to me, because humor is a coping mechanism for me. Always has been. It's a family thing. In fact, in one of the things in the book, and my daughters are here, so whether they'll like me talking about this or not, is the drama flag. So I loaned the drama flag to Liv. It's something that we started using when they were teenagers. They would bicker and bicker. I know, you never bickered, but you really did. And sometimes when the drama would get too high, one day, just out of nowhere, I had this picture in my head of the flag, the penalty flag in football. And I was like, that's interesting. And one of my daughters is a costume designer, and so she always had fabric around the house. So I went and found a piece of yellow cloth, and I cut a square out of it, and I wrapped a couple of rubber bands around one corner of it so it would get some weight, and then you could throw it. It was the drama flag. So we kept it in the family room, and anybody could use it, and that was the risk. Anybody could use it, so even the adults could get the drama flag thrown at them, which happens in the books. And break up the moment. Again, it was humor. It was not to embarrass anybody or to humiliate anybody. It was to say, let's just pause for a second, and maybe we can figure out what this is really about. Maybe that teacher doesn't actually hate you. Maybe it's something else. So yeah, it was a really useful tool, and humor is woven throughout the books because it makes them more interesting.
Did that come with like a 15-yard penalty?
Maybe sometimes just spread them out 15 yards so that they can't reach each other.
An occasional ejection from the house.
Yeah, it was a really fun tool. I have it here today if anybody wants to see the drama flag.
Well, you might need to use it.
You never know.
So you've had 3 books out. You've written poetry books. You have nonfiction. when you get like this box of books, it just came out. When you get your copies and they come, how does that feel? This is one question I tend to ask a lot of authors, because to me, it's that people don't realize how hard these books are and how complicated, and how many plot threads and character motivations and everything that you're interweaving throughout a story.
Yes.
So you finally get it. What tell us about that moment when that box of books shows up?
Actually, it's both joy and terror for me. The joy is just seeing that and being able to just feel the accomplishment of holding that in your hand. Because it really, like you said, it's an accomplishment to write a book and then to take it all the way to publication too, because I'm an independent author. So a lot of those steps along the way I'm doing myself. So holding that book in my hand is just thrilling. And the anticipation of getting to share it with people is exciting, but it's also scary, because for me, these are my little babies that are going out into the world, and will people like them? Will they be nice to them? So yeah, there's some terror along with receiving those books, but mostly it's joy.
You have I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but you have a cocktail from one of your books.
Yes.
It's available here, The Late.
The Late.
And it's what, scotch, lemon juice, absinthe, lime juice.
And some honey.
And honey, yeah. So that's available downstairs if anybody's interested. And
it's from the first book.
So how did you come up with the name The Late?
Well, Liv is the main character, and her husband's name was Nate. And so her friends made this for their 15th wedding anniversary. They like to make cocktails. And so they made up one, and they matched up their names for Liv and Nate, so they called it The Late. And of course, obviously, after he passes away, it's not as funny anymore, the name of the drink. But the purpose of the ingredients were that scotch was his favorite alcohol, and the lemon and lime juice stood for the sour times in a relationship, and the honey stood for the sweet times, and the absinthe was how to keep things exciting.
But it certainly will do that.
I actually did research absinthe when I was writing the book, and it's not a hallucinogen, so you're all okay if you have one.
And you're also going to do a drawing at the end, or you're going to pick a couple people here?
Yes, I have 2 door prizes. Yes, we have a witchy door prize because of the witch theme, and then we also have a baseball-themed door prize to give out.
I know one person in particular here who wants that baseball prize.
Yes. If any of you are Washington Nationals fans, there's a Brady House bobblehead in it. So yeah, pretty exciting. We have an extensive bobblehead collection in home.
Do you see the gentleman bouncing up and down in his seat over there?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we've talked baseball a lot of times. So, but what was interesting about that is that it features the Fredericksburg Nationals, or the Fred Nats, which is our local minor league team. And I reached out to the general manager at one point because a friend connected us and said, hey, I'd love to get a tour of the stadium while I was still working on the book. So he said, yeah, definitely. And I brought Bill with me, my husband, and because we're both huge baseball fans. And he took me on a 2-hour tour of the stadium. It's a very small stadium. So I got to see every part of the stadium, which was so much fun, behind the scenes of every room. And it even snowed. It was a beautiful experience. And in part of it, you walked into this one part where they keep all the alcohol. And first of all, you hit with this wow, that's a lot of alcohol. You can smell it as soon as you walk in. And there are 3 women that work back there. And 2 of them came running up to me as we were starting to walk away. And they were like, wait, there's something we didn't tell you. And so they told me about the stadium being haunted. And I was like, what? This is a brand new stadium. How can it be haunted? And so they told me that both the convention center next door, which apparently is really haunted, and the stadium are both haunted. And that they were related to Civil War hauntings, I guess. There was, and I'm sorry, it's not funny, but it is kind of funny. Where the stadium is, there was a horse graveyard from the Civil War. So I'm sitting there thinking, the horses are haunting you? Like, what is that about? But so it was just very interesting that they were so excited to tell me, because they were both big readers. And so they're in the acknowledgments of the book. And I did an event at the stadium the day after the launch. I had a table out on the concourse, and they came running over and they bought copies of the books. And it was just so sweet. They were so excited about the book because they had gotten to be part of the story.
A horse graveyard makes for spooky neighbors. I'm so sorry.
But I'm bummed.
Feel free to throw the flag at any time. All right. So when you're creating characters, I'm always curious about this. So you have an idea for a book. You have a rough idea of what the book's like. How do you populate this with your characters?
For me, it was easy because I did base the circle of friends on my friends. And even her neighbor Lucia is based on one of my friends, loosely based. Now, some of my friends aren't as excited as others as how their characters turned out. But I keep reminding them, it's just loosely based on you. Like the one who represents Hannah, she, until this book, hasn't been a big fan of Hannah. And I was like, oh, just wait. Because I had so much fun writing Hannah in this book. It was great. I love Hannah. So I get very wrapped up in the characters as I'm writing them. The baseball player who's in the book, Mando, is a little bit embarrassing. But we like to go to the Fred Nats game. So we were at one of the games, and I kept looking around and going, where is he? Why isn't he here? I was so involved in writing the book that I actually thought he was a real person and he would show up at the baseball game. So I was like, oh, wait, he doesn't actually exist.
Do you see him here now?
He's in the back, yeah. He's really cute, too.
So when you're basing it on a real person, does that help you when you're envisioning the scenes and the interactions between characters? Or does it get in the way because you have a real person there who is different from the character?
Well, for me, it didn't get in the way because really it was just a launching point for the characters. It was just a way to start with an image in my mind. And I'm very dialogue focused. I love to write the dialogue. In fact, that's the one thing about writing that goes back to my childhood. I never envisioned being a writer as a child, but in 5th grade in Mr. Ainsworth's class, I don't know if you remember Mr. Ainsworth, but we had to write a short story, and I was writing this and thinking, oh my God, this is so cool. I get to put words in their mouth. And that was the part that was really exciting to me. I never wanted to be a writer, but now I still love to write the dialogue. So I really enjoy just imagining the conversations that my friends and I might have and making them come to life in the books.
What do you think's behind that? Like, what is it like
I might
psychologically?
talk a lot. That might have something to do with it. I am from Jersey. We talk a lot. I don't know. I just enjoy conversation. You know, I like engaging in exchanging thoughts with people. And that, for me, that's where humor comes up naturally, is in conversation and things like that. So yeah, I just really enjoy the process of writing that.
So when you're building these characters and they're changing, do you like do character sketches? Like how deep do you go in what what are the traits and quirks and what they look like and everything, or does that sort of evolve as you write?
Yeah, I am the least likely to plan in advance. So I don't do outlines. I don't do any of that stuff. And it actually would make me crazy to have to write an outline for my book. I couldn't do it. So no, I don't. Like, I know who they are in my head, but I don't write it down. Somebody actually asked me recently, because you get to know Gina Gomez, the detective, a little better in the 3rd book. And there's a little backstory on her in the book. And somebody asked me, did I know that backstory before I started writing it? And I said, actually, I did, because it comes up a little bit in one of the other books. I knew what happened. I didn't know all the details. So they do evolve as I go along, but I do know them pretty well. I just don't write it all down. I don't do the deep character sketch, which I probably should, because I'll forget details along the way, I'm sure, but somebody will tell me.
Yeah, they definitely will tell you.
Yeah.
So like how when you want character change, over the course of a book, they have to have these misbeliefs, or they have to look at things a different way, or they have to overcome something. There has to be some kind of movement, right? So if you don't know what the character really is at the beginning, does that just sort of happen organically for you, or is that something you go back and edit and enhance?
No, it really happens organically as part of the story, and occasionally, we full disclosure, we're in a writers group together. So when I was writing the 2nd book, I shared the first few chapters with our writers group. And somebody, it might have been Mark, said at the beginning, they were like, wow, this is a really interesting thought right here. And it became a theme in the whole book. It was, maybe somebody doesn't want to know their future. Like, are you really responsible for somebody's future? They might not want to know. And so that became a theme in the book. And I didn't know that was going to be a theme in the book until somebody saw it and said, hey, this part stood out to me as being interesting. And I was like, yeah, you know what, you're right. And so that really became a thread in the book. So that was something that Liv had to learn too, because she has these psychic visions and she feels very responsible for the people in the visions. Like, do I need to save their life, or do I need to do whatever to help this person? And she has to come to terms with the fact that people are independent people. Maybe they don't want to be saved. Not everybody wants to be saved. And that brought up a story that a friend of mine who's a healer had told me, and that made its way into the story too, that maybe someone doesn't want to be healed. You need their permission if you want to do a healing for someone. So that really became a strong theme in book 2.
If I need healing, just go ahead and do it.
Okay.
By definition.
Noted.
So I'm curious, because you don't plan any of this out, do you have an idea of the ending? I mean, is there any point in the future that you're aiming for?
Yes. I mean, I usually do know how it will end. I'm not always sure how I'm going to get there. In book 2 in particular, which was weird for me, I wrote one of the ending scenes early on, and then I had to figure out how to get there. So that was too confusing for me. I like to write chronologically, so I write as the story happens. For me, honestly, and I know that it sounds weird, but I really do feel like I sit down and I listen to the story unfold, and I just write it down. So I'm kind of eavesdropping on the characters, and it's really kind of fun.
So, I mean, I have the experience too. I wouldn't say listening, I'd say watching, because I'm very visual. So you actually feel like the story's happening and you're documenting it.
Yes. And that's a really fun process for me because I never know what's going to happen next. So that can be very exciting.
So, in your opinion, what's happening there? Like, how does that happen? Right? Like the story, you're sitting back and the story's just coming to you. How do you think that happens? And I've had so many strange answers for this. Like I ask people where a story comes from. What's going on there?
I'm sure it's different for everybody. For me, it's a process of listening. So I go through life listening to a lot of different things and a lot of things that might seem strange to people, like trees or rocks. And that was where the poetry started for me. So one day I was not writing poetry, and the next day I was. I went through this, what was called the spiritual discernment process one day with a friend because I was feeling a little lost. And it was a 12-step process, which most things are. But it was just, you started with a question, and the question was where you fill in a blank. It was, what is mine to do to blank? And so you sit in meditation with a question. And so my question turned out to be, what is mine to do to be happy? And I was like, well, crap, because that means I'm not happy. So I guess I got to figure that out first. But then you sit in meditation on the answer to the question. And the answer to the question was one word. It was write. And I was not a writer, and I had no idea what that meant. I was like, how would writing make me happy? I don't know. But it was about willingness. So I said, okay, well, I'm willing to find out what that means. The next day, I started writing poetry, the very next morning, and I haven't stopped since. And I had never written a poem in my life, and I didn't even recognize what they were at first. I just kept showing them to my friend Christine and being like, hey, look what I did. And she would read them and give me feedback, and it was really fun. And it was scary to share them beyond her eventually, but it was the most joyful process. And I didn't expect that. I didn't know that writing would bring me such joy, but it really is one of my soul's greatest joys. And it was a process of listening. It was a process of opening my heart to the words and just writing them down. They would move through me. And I feel like that's also what fiction writing is for me, is that opening my heart to the story. And wherever it comes from, I don't always know. I think there's an element of magic to it, that if you're willing to listen, then the story will come to you. I've heard other stories from other writers that they had an idea for a story, but they never wrote it, but then somebody else did, because that story is out there somewhere, and it's just looking for the right heart that's open to it to write it. And so I think that's a huge part of the process for me, is an open heart and listening.
I've given that advice to people. I don't put it in those same words, right? But opening yourself to all the possibility that's there and letting the story come to you. I believe that every possibility for everything does exist, right? It's just a matter of what you're going to see.
And it's exciting. You don't know what the next story will be.
And that joy, right, that you have. You're how many? You have three or four poetry books, and you have a nonfiction, four in a nonfiction book, and now 3 in the series. It's a lot of books, and you still get excited by the process.
I do. Yeah.
How important is that for a writer to find the joy in the process of writing, instead of getting hung up on like the difficult market or reader reactions or whatever, right? It's a tough business.
I don't think I would finish a book if I didn't enjoy writing it, right? Because what would drive me forward with the story if I didn't enjoy the process? So yeah, that's a huge part of it for me. And in fact, I hadn't until this past week started writing book 4, and I kept thinking like, I haven't started it yet. I really need to get started. I'm way behind schedule. But I hadn't found the spark, the story that excited me. And so when I started writing this week, I started to see all the threads that were going to come together for the story, and I got really excited about it. So happily, very few words so far, but I have started writing it.
So you open yourself, you're listening. By the way, did you say you were listening to Trees and Rocks?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I got to ask. Please explain.
Oh, I've heard all sorts of stories and wisdom. I learned so much wisdom from trees by watching and listening. Yeah, I think everything can share its story with you if you're open to hearing it.
Oh, that's so interesting. So by opening yourself, like, what is the trigger then? You said you weren't starting, the story wasn't really coming to you. Is it just a matter of time, or do you do things to like access your creativity in the moment? Because once you started writing, it starts coming.
Yeah, I think in this case, I was just a little burned out from the lead up to the book, the 3rd book, and then I started a new job recently, and so my energy level wasn't as high as it usually is to start with. So, but part of the key for me is just sitting down in front of the keyboard and giving myself the time to write. So I get up early and make that time for myself. So yeah, it was just, I think I had a little bit of burnout and I wasn't ready to start. But now I am, and I'm excited about it. So
I mean, having just three novels out and all these other books. I mean,
I can't write as fast as you.
No, that's a lot, right? I mean, that's really a lot. And so, like, I'm curious about like how that writing practice developed, and and from the very beginning, you had this joy with the poetry, right? So
Yes.
you're writing; it's something you're passionate about. I think that's a place where all writers should start, But then, how did you turn that into like regularly writing? Like writing a poem. I mean, writing poetry is incredibly hard, but it's short, right? Novels
Yes.
are not. So it takes like a different practice to write a novel than it does to write poetry or short stories or anything. Well, tell us a little bit about like how you develop this practice to be consistent, because you're putting out a book a year.
Well, and that's everything that I heard once I started joining writers groups and reading more about the writing process, was that you have to be consistent. You have to make the time every day. But one of the best things that I ever heard was, the director of The Sixth Sense, the writer of The Sixth Sense. M. Night Shyamalan. Yes, he said about his writing process, he's like, yeah, I write every day, but my goal is to write 7 pages. And I was like, that's it? Like, I could do that. Like, it really was eye-opening to me that I didn't have to write the whole novel in a day. So just not putting that pressure on myself was a huge part of learning my writing process. Was, I'll write as much as I can write today. And even if it's just a page, at least I wrote something. And so that became part of my process, just not having unreasonable expectations of myself in terms of how much I'm going to get done that day. It's just to get something on the page. And that may not stay in the story, and that's okay. But just to get something going. And, some of the things that help me are like the writing sprint kind of things where you're with other people and you're all writing at the same time. Sisters in Crime does the summer scrawl right now, and that's really helpful just to be in commiseration with other writers at the same time.
Are there things you do like in your writing space that help generate your creativity? Like, I mean, some people drink, some people have tea, some people curl up on a couch, right? There's all these. Do you have rituals that are involved before you start for the day?
Most of my ritual is just no interruptions. So my poor husband, if he comes in, he gets the look like, you can't interrupt me right now. I'm right in the middle of this thread. And I usually need silence. Like, I don't want a lot of music or anything like that. The only music I can listen to when I'm writing is Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. That really helps me get in the groove for writing. But other than that, I just need my space. I like to have the windows where I can watch the birds outside. But yeah, mostly I just need isolation.
Do you listen to the same album all the time, or the same
playlist? I
playlist?
listen to it over and over again, just Kind of Blue over and over again. If I'm using music, I don't always write with music on.
I was talking to some author, I can't remember who it was, and she listened to the same song over and over and over again for the entire novel.
Wow.
Because it does sort of fade into the background, right?
It
But it triggers your mind, like now it's time to write.
Yeah, I don't have any food or drink or anything in particular that I need to have to write, but yeah, I just need to have my alone time.
So I'm curious, because you get this joy from writing, and I think that is the key to good writing too, right? If it's bringing you joy, it'll bring your readers joy.
I think it shows up in the characters if you really enjoy writing them, right?
So where does that come from? Like, why is writing something that's special to you? You mentioned you didn't want to be a writer when you were younger, right? So this is something that happened later to you in life. Was there a story, or was there some influence when you were younger that captivated you?
I've always loved stories. So I loved to read. I would stay up late reading. Like, recently I answered a question about my favorite books to read as a child. Pippi Longstocking by far. I loved Pippi Longstocking. I would stay up late under the blanket reading Pippi Longstocking because she kicked ass. I loved Pippi. And she never apologized for who she was. She was great. She was a great example for girls, I thought. And one of the fun parts about the books is that I get to, so Liv works as an editor and proofreader for a small publishing company. And so I get to make up the books or the articles that she's working on. And so with the last book, or is it this one? See, I'm getting confused. She is working on a biography about Astrid Lindgren, who wrote Pippi Longstocking. So I got to research her life a little bit, which was really interesting. So that's a fun part about the books, is I get to make up, like this time she's proofing something about frogs, and there's some really interesting frogs. So I have a lot of fun with that.
How much research do you do when you're writing fiction, and how do you know when to stop?
Well, I've learned as I've gone along, because the first book I did a whole lot of research. What's fun about writing about a real city, because Fredericksburg is where I've lived for 30 years, is I'm still learning new things about it when I'm researching. So that's fascinating to me. And the first book, the building that Liv lives in, used to be the first hospital in Fredericksburg. And there's all sorts of interesting stories about it. And in the first draft, I had stuff about how much they charged on the ward for this hospital and who built the building. And I thought it was fascinating because the Historical Society sent me all this stuff to use to research. And I thought it all should go in the book. And most people were like, this is super boring. So a lot of that didn't make it into the book because it's not interesting for everybody else to find all that detail. So really, I had to learn as I went along about how much, like, is this really important to the story? And will everybody fall asleep if they're reading it? If I want it to be a cure for insomnia, which many women face in menopause, then maybe that's okay. But yeah, it was really a balancing act trying to figure out what I found fascinating and think about if other people will find that as fascinating. So a lot of that got cut out in the first book. And so I got better at knowing how much needed to be in there. But because the second book, I went down a lot of rabbit holes about Edgar Allan Poe, because there's a Poe theme in that one. And that was fascinating. But again, it didn't all need to be in the book. But it does add to the story, even if the words aren't there, I think, because it makes the characters more authentic and the storyline more authentic.
When you're talking about setting, how much does the setting affect your characters and the plot? Is it like tone? Is it the mood of the scenes that you're getting, or is it actual like physical pieces of your setting that are affecting the plot?
For me, I like to think of it as almost a character, that Fredericksburg is a character in the story. It's not, because it's a cozy, I think especially, it doesn't add a lot to the mood, I don't think. But I do think it's what they inhabit, right? So it's something that's around them every day, and it's part of who they are. Her circle of friends have all lived there for a long time, so it really is part of their lifestyle. And some of them have been from Fredericksburg families that have lived there for generations, and so that's part of the story too. And yeah, I think it adds a lot to it as a character in the story.
And since you're doing your discovering as you go with these stories, at some point, like, because if the setting is like, affecting the plot, is the character arc, like the change within the character, are you connecting that to your plot as the plot develops? Or are you going back and seeing parallels? Like, sometimes like a change within the character can result in them solving something in the plot, or solving something in the plot results in a change in the character. Does that happen for you or not?
That's a hard question. I believe that they do feed each other, that as she evolves, the plot changes too, that the plot affects her, how she evolves, especially in her relationship, I think, with Lucia. And in this new book, she gets to witness a group of women that she might not have had access to otherwise without the story driving it forward. And there's a theme in the book about women being able to be who they are and not have to fight to be who they are, just be accepted for who they are. And so she has to look at her own judgment, because she would see herself as someone who doesn't judge other women for being who they are, and yet she notices some things come up automatically, words like coven and things like that come up in her mind for these group of women that maybe they wouldn't use for themselves, or maybe it would mean something different for them. So yeah, as the story is driving her forward, she is evolving as a character. So I think probably the plot drives it a little bit more than the other way around for me.
Is it harder for you to show character change when you're in a series? Because you can't have that dramatic change right within each book, or it pulls the reader out.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. That's one thing that I do think of long term over this series, about planning for that, what will change for her over time. Like in the third book, she does have a romantic character that comes into her life, a relationship potentially. And for me, dealing with that grief, very honestly, is important. That, she lost her husband and he was the love of her life. So how does she move into a new relationship without leaving him behind, right? So that's a very big element for her in terms of growth in the stories is, how do I get from this place of intense grief to a place where I can open myself to a possibility? It doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all, but even just the possibility.
Do you have an idea where the character arc goes over the length of a series? Like, do you know how many books are in the series?
No, I don't know how many books are in the series. I have ideas for a couple of more. Okay, so I grew up in this little town called Medford Lakes in South Jersey. And every year, this has got to be one of the books. Every year they have this event they call the Canoe Carnival. It used to happen on the first full moon of August every year, but now it's just like the first Saturday or something. But basically, for me, from my perspective as a child, it was an excuse for the parents to get together and get drunk. So they had clubs, and they would each club would build a float. So you had two canoes in a platform, and there was a theme for the year, and you would build a float to the theme. And then everybody would drink while they're building them, and then they'd drink the night of, and they would paddle these canoes with a big platform on them. So if it's windy that night, it's a big disaster. And they would paddle them around this little lake, because you got to paddle them past the judges' stand. And then there was also a Miss Medford Lakes contest that was part of that, and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think that Canoe Carnival needs to be the setting for one of the mysteries, because why wouldn't you?
That screams cozy.
Exactly, it screams cozy. So yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of fun with that. But I need to go back because I haven't been in a long time for the Canoe Carnival, so I need to go witness it again.
How important is that for you to go to a location like that and to see
I
things
think it's
firsthand?
really important. Like, hey, I'm going to use it as an excuse to go to Ireland for research because she's a distant relative of Oscar Wilde, and there's going to be a Wilde family descendants reunion that she has to go to in Ireland, so I'll have to go for research. But no, I do think it's really important, especially if you're going to write about real places like Fredericksburg. I think it needs to be real to the people, and people who live there will tell you if you get it wrong, so it's got to be very authentic.
Don't forget to deduct a trip on your taxes.
Exactly.
So I got to ask you some process questions because
Okay.
we have so many authors. What are you writing in? Like, what is Word, Scrivener,
program?
by hand?
I use Scrivener. I started out using Word for the first book, and then I decided to try Scrivener, and I like it better. But I feel like I would like it a whole lot better if I would actually do the tutorials and know what I'm doing. So I think it has a lot more uses than I make use of. But I would like to learn more about it eventually. But I do find it a little bit easier to work with than Word.
I mean, it has a million uses, but I think if you use about 10 of the functions, it makes your life infinitely easier. It's a good one.
That's what I keep hearing.
I read somewhere that 90% of authors are using Scrivener. I mean, it's really excellent software.
Yeah.
What about for editing? Are you using any editing software?
No, nothing in particular. And I hire an editor to do the editing, developmentally and regular editing.
A lot of the editing software now will do like manuscript evaluation and do things because they're using the form of AI or these large language models. What is your thought on AI and the way it's starting to infect the writing business? And I use that word infect intentionally.
Yes. I'm not a fan, to put it mildly. I'm one of the people whose books got picked up for one of the, I forget the name of it. But anyway, they used one of my books in the training.
The Anthropic
Anthropic,
case.
yes. But there was something about the dates that it didn't get used until after a certain date, and so I didn't qualify for the lawsuit. So I get nothing from it. Even if it was $5, I'm getting nothing. So yeah, it's really disheartening to work so hard on a book. And I just read an article from the New York Times the other day that another writer had shared about AI slop books. And this guy who lives on the Chesapeake Bay who's written over 400 books using AI. He doesn't write them. He has AI write the chapter, and then he edits the chapter. He publishes 10 books a week through Amazon. And yeah, so that's disheartening. There's a lot of competition out there, obviously, already. But these books that they're not even writing themselves are now competition too. And he's probably making more money than I am on his books because he's got 400 of them out. So the odds are in his favor.
I did see a study on some of the AI-driven work, and a lot of them were only selling like 10 copies.
Yeah, but if you've got 400 of them and you sell 10 copies of each, it's not so bad.
Yeah, there were 4 million books that came out in 2025. It's a 32% increase over 2024.
Well,
and I'm predicting, based on nothing just but what I've been reading, that it's going to be 6 million this year. And it's so how do you break out? You're self-published. How do you break out when you have like 4 to 6 million books coming out in a year? How do you get any attention?
When I figure that out, I'll let you know.
Well, it's a problem for everybody, even if you're with HarperCollins. Like, it's a problem for every author I talk to. So what have you done that you feel like had some traction?
I think it's things like this. I love to talk about the books. I have fun talking about the books. And I'd like to, because for me, again, there's that hope that it will spark conversations among women. But I also just enjoy talking about the characters because I have fun writing them. So I like to do in-person events, and I think that really helps a lot because you can connect with readers and they can actually hear from you directly. But I also do a lot of guest blog posts and things like that and connect with other cozy mystery groups like on Facebook. That's always a good thing for cozy mystery authors. To do the cozy mystery takeover days, that kind of thing. So I do those as much as I can do.
Do you feel like when you're connecting to people based on theme, like menopause, that has more traction than, say, connecting to just like a mystery reader group?
I actually thought that it would, but it didn't turn out that way. So yeah, I haven't, but it could be that I haven't found the right way yet to connect with those groups that are talking about menopause. But I thought that would be a way to reach people about the books, but I'm having more luck with cozy mystery readers or mystery readers in general.
I guess it's a Venn diagram, right? So it's a smaller subset
Yes.
that hit both groups.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna come around in a second for questions. Oh, over here, does anybody have a question on this side of the room? Anybody? Over here, here we go.
Oh no, that's dangerous.
Why, hello.
Hello, what's your name?
Oh, my name's Jessica. How very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So this book has a lot to do with baseball.
Yes,
So you grew up a Phillies fan.
I did.
Are are now a Nationals fan.
True.
How much were you influenced by your childhood teams in the baseball representation versus the Nationals?
Oh, I think I was influenced a great deal by the Phillies and by the Phillies fans in particular.
Yeah.
Yes, one of Liv's favorite umpire heckles in the books is from my childhood going to a Phillies game and hearing somebody scream, "If you had another eye, you'd be a cyclops," which then became my favorite heckle for for umpires. So there you go. So the Phillies taught me that the city of brotherly love isn't really about brotherly love after all. And one of the reasons I became a Nationals fan is because Jason Worth, who I adored, came to the Nationals from the Phillies. And I was a fan of his while he was played for the Phillies. But the Phillies fans would come to the games and were so mean to him. They were cruel to him, to the point where when he made a catch and broke his wrist, they cheered. And he's an athlete. You don't cheer when an athlete gets hurt. So that's when I became a Nationals fan instead of a Phillies fan, because that was just inappropriate.
Thank you.
Any other questions over here?
Oh, no.
Hi, this is Bill.
Hi.
What is your trail name?
I forgot about that. Yeah, so we went on a thru hike a couple of years ago, and my trail name was Pippi. So there you go. Pippi stayed with me my whole life because I had two braids. They didn't quite stick up like Pippi's, but yes. So that became my trail name was Pippi. So she's a theme throughout my life, I guess.
All right, so what do you have coming up next?
In terms of events, I'm going to be at the Fredericksburg Independent Book Festival on October 3rd. And then October 24th, I think, I'm going to be at the Crozet Book Festival in their author marketplace.
And you're writing book 4.
And I'm writing book 4. And I think that's it
And where can people go to find you?
My website is www.lindaallenwrites.com, and it's Lynda with a Y, which I've had to say my whole life because my parents spelled it with a Y instead of an I, which I think is right because Lynn is spelled with a Y, so why wouldn't you?
I feel like you've touched a nerve there.
Yes, but actually, throughout my whole life, it's why it's so important to me to spell people's names right, because I've had to spell mine over and over again for people for my whole life, so I really like to respect how people spell their names.
And you have books here for sale, and you'll be signing, correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, fantastic. The one thing I always ask people, if you would just go on Amazon and rate your book, it takes like 15 seconds, and it makes a big difference for people when they're trying to discover new writers, especially.
It does.
And if you like what we're doing at Elaine's Literary Salon, please check out elainesliterarysalon.com, and we'd love a review for the restaurant too. Well, thank you so
It's
much.
an amazing opportunity for authors to get to come and be here with you and have this chance to talk about their books. So I really appreciate that.
No, it's my pleasure. This has been so much fun. Thank you for coming in. Come back for book 4.
Absolutely.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you, Jeff.